Well, hello everyone. It's a payroll update. We're only December 6th here, and I might put my reading glasses on if I'm not too apprehensive about how awful I look in them. They do help me read, but I kind of want to do this without looking. And I know that sounds a little bit counterintuitive because we're going to do a really technical payroll video, but it's almost better if I can't see what we're doing. I'll explain why. So we're about to get started in payroll season on this channel, on my channel. My channel is providing Excel and Google Sheets based applications to help make your life easier, to help eliminate errors, to help organize data. In this case, it's to help run your business that I focus on over the next couple months. And so I go through every single state and I program them all into a Google Sheet and an Excel file. And I try to provide it to everyone at a very reasonable price so that you can manage your own payroll, basically. Now, from a top-down perspective, there's a whole lot of things that you kind of need to know if you're going to run your own payroll, but they're very reasonable things and you're responsible for them anyway, even if you hire a third-party payroll provider. So we're going to talk about Alabama in this video. We're talking about how this file works, how we check it. And so you're going to have some faith in how this thing is created and what it does. And just we're going to go through Alabama and we're going to talk about how you estimate your liability if you want to make sure that you're withholding correctly, because certain taxes you need to pay, like Social Security and Medicare and unemployment. These are hard costs that are programmed in, that they are a specific rate that you have to pay. But there's other numbers that are not as specific. There are other numbers that are somewhat of an art form when you're figuring out what you're withholding, because there's a federal withholding and some states have state tax, which there's state withholding. And it's so complicated sometimes that you actually get different answers on different websites when you check what to do. And I'm going to show you an example of this and show you how we get where we get here with Alabama. So what I was doing is I was updating Alabama today, as it's at the top of the list alphabetically because Alaska doesn't have state tax. And I was just running some sample tests, running paychecks. There are sources that you can use to run paycheck samples. There's Paycheck City, which is a fantastic resource that's really in depth. There's Suburban Computer. I love these guys as well. And so I ran the same pay stub in both of the services and got a slightly different Alabama withholding by pennies. One was $117.92. The other was $117.73. And I was like, they don't match. Is somebody wrong? The answer is not always. Not always. It's actually that there's different ways of withholding sometimes, and these are very, very close. So I went and I did the research on what you need to know for Alabama withholding, and I reviewed all the formulas. And I'm not going to kill you technically with explaining how you program all these formulas in Excel and Google Sheets, but here is where we do that. Is in the area of the pay period record sheet. There's a column for every single type of way to withhold and your filing status that's related to your status in Alabama. And when you choose that, you choose whether or not you have any exemptions, whether or not you have any dependent exemptions, and what your filing status is in Alabama over here. That would be Alabama single, Alabama married filing separately, or Alabama head of household. And you can read up on filling out your Alabama A4 so that you know what to answer those questions. And this is what you need to present your employer with, or your employee presents you with this if you are the employer. And they fill this out, and you're going to enter the information from this A4 directly in here into the Google Sheet. So I went and I evaluated all the formulas. And what we came up with is that Paycheck City is the more accurate one. We have the $117.73. And so I'll do this checks for every state as I continue to work on this over the next month before it's finally ready and before the federal government issues their final publication 15, before this finalizes for 2023. We'll go through all of them and we'll analyze every single formula and look through all the instructions to program the proper formulas into the file. So I want to get something else in this video because it's more interesting, which is, well, what if you run a sample paycheck And it comes up with something significantly different than what one of these payroll providers or websites that would allow you to check one single paycheck, what it comes up with. Well, what's going on with that if it's over withholding or under withholding? Like say instead of $117 in Alabama state tax, it said like $25 or $30, like way less than it's here. Well, what's going on, and is there a problem in the payroll file? Are you going to have a problem at the end of the year? Is your employee going to under withhold and over withhold? And that's where I have something else that I'm working on that I'm going to be selling as part of the payroll package, something that you can actually give to your employees and utilize to figure out what their annual withholding should actually be. And that is this Excel file, which will eventually be a Google Sheet, but it's only an Excel file right now. And it is a simulated tax return. And so what it does is it allows you to kind of show you, if you make a certain amount of money, what are you actually going to owe at the end of the year? You can fill this out as much as you'd like to get an idea of what you might owe. But this is essentially as easy as I could come up with so that you can kind of understand what the withholding amounts that are on your payroll, the rates that are being applied to the wages, whether or not they mean anything. So this works for federal withholding right now. It doesn't work for Alabama, but we can add states to this and it would just to kind of show you how this works. So let's take a look at our employee for a second. So our employee here was making $2,985, almost $3,000 every week. That's a ton of money. That's a pretty big wage for a week. Most people are not making that much. So we would say, well, if they're making $2,985, let's call it 3,000 just for rounding's sake, 3,000 a week. Well, what are their gross wages going to be for the year if they make that amount every week? You go into your tax file here and you have an area for wages and salaries. It's right here. That's going to be 2,985. We're not rounding. 2,985 times 52. And all of a sudden, it's $155,000 a year that this employee is grossing. Well, there are a bunch of other questions in here, and you can go through a lot of them, but a lot of them you don't have to answer. A lot of this is automated. So for federal withholding purposes, if this person is single and does not have any dependents, that's where the questions are. Let's say they have one dependent, because I think we answered one dependent, right? In the Alabama withholding questionnaire there. Let's take a look. We answered that this employee does not have any dependents, actually. So the answer is no there. Let's go back. So no dependents. Because dependents and child tax credits are going to, whoa, what just happened? What just happened? Crazy stuff happens. Cancel. That back in there. Dependents, 0. Easy. So no dependents. So this $155,000 of gross. Well, what's kind of cool is that all the standard deductions, if this person doesn't itemize their deductions, they just take the standard deduction, all this stuff just flowed through. And it shows you what their federal tax is that's due if you don't have to fill out any more of their tax return, if they don't have any more complexity to their taxes. Even though we have all these different placeholders for all the different major forms, like schedules and forms, they're all in here. And you can, excuse me, you can go through and you can fill out those forms if you've ever dealt with your own tax before. It's basically just like a linear question and answer for all the forms in one sheet, and it's all connected. So what's really cool about that is you can just refresh things. There's this pivot here. You can just refresh, open up your 1040, and it says you owe $28,261 in federal tax. Well, that's what you'd owe for the year if you didn't withhold anything from your pay. Well, let's find out if we're withholding the right amount. $28,261 is what it would be for a year. So let's go back to our payroll file for a second. And let's look at this pay stub. And what would end up being withheld in 1 week, what end up being withheld was $538. Well, if you withhold that every week times 52, that ends up being $27,976 is how much you'd withhold from federal. How does that compare with 28,261 that you owe if you don't have any other additional stuff in your tax return? It's actually quite close. It's within about $500, right? 27,000, yeah, only $300. That is well within margin of error, and that would be a little bit that this person would owe, but they probably have some other deductions on their tax return because we didn't deduct for hardly anything. So it's extremely close to what is due. And this is a way that you can prove to your employee, be like, hey, employee, fill this thing out and we'll get an idea if we are withholding the correct amount for you for the state and for the federal, because we'll also estimate what your state liability will be, even though the state liability is not in this file yet. And I say that because we could add states' raw main forms in here just to get an idea. That is something that is doable. I'm going to need more investment and time to do that because every state's forms is making this 50 times is difficult to finish. But I want to do just federal first because, people file separate state and federal. So I kind of want to do just the federal at 1040. But there's nothing that's stopping us from doing a roundabout estimate. And I just wanted to show that you should have the confidence that if you want to do your accounting correctly and you want to get a handle on your business and what you owe and estimated liabilities of things throughout the year and automatic reporting, that this application, it's extremely inexpensive and it works really, really well. And it makes, I enjoy working on it and getting everything right because I just fixed Alabama for this year. And while Alabama may change next year, we have a head start on getting everything exactly right. And I'm going to go through every state. You're going to see videos all this month as I go through every state and we go through all the little quirks. I might even try to do Connecticut correctly, even though I don't want to, don't think it's worth it. There's a whole lot of things we'll talk about. So I just wanted you to know that this is where my time is. We are now through Alaska and Alabama, and I have gone through every single state unemployment potential for the next year and made some notes about what's happening to certain states' unemployment rates, because unemployment is another expense that cures your expenses. You have federal withholding you need to withhold from the employee, sometimes state withholding if you're in a state that has state withholding. You almost always have unemployment to deal with, which is an employer-only expense that you have to pay. It does not come out of the employee's wages. You have Social Security tax, a 6.2% comes out of the employee's wages, and a 6.2% that is paid by the employer only. So there's Social Security is separated into two parts, as you can see here on the pay stub. You'll see employee FICA, but then you also see something that's not on the pay stub because it's an employer expense. It's a reporting expense, and that is shown in the 941 report because there's employer and there's employee. And it's also listed out here as a breakdown of all your employees' expenses because you have something called total 941 tax due, which is what you owe the federal government every quarter when you file this, or monthly or semi-weekly when you deposit, depending on the size of your business. And that is going to include federal tax plus employer Social Security plus employer Medicare. That's employer costs that do not come out of the employee's wages, plus employee Social Security, which does come out of employees' wages, plus employee Medicare, which does come out of employees' wages. And that results in everything that goes into the 941 tax that is paid. Then there are separate state taxes that go to the state. There may be separate local taxes that go to a local municipality or jurisdiction, which we have all those listed all the way down in this huge matrix of different counties and different states and everything that's related to specific states. And you can see that it's enormous. You can see here's all our state and our counties. Got them broken out by state. You can actually choose them. There's a huge drop down list in the Google Sheet so that when you're filling out your state and your county, if your state has a county, they're all listed here with the state abbreviation first. So it's like Indiana has Allen County. you would never tax Indiana's Allen County in Alabama. So you wouldn't choose that. There are no Alabama local taxes according to my records in this file. But you have the ability to look up all of these counties. I mean, everything gets updated. It is a massive enterprise, but it is manageable and it does work. So I just want to give everybody an update. Alabama is done. I can explain Alabama and it's accurate. Tomorrow, we will go into Arkansas. We will discuss if anything is happening in Arizona, but you got to remember that a lot of these states are not updated for 2023 yet. So we are going to have to revisit them. Sometimes they don't even notify you. They just post new rates up and never tell anybody. And they don't do it at the beginning of the year. So it requires constant maintenance, which is why I want to have everyone accessing this Google Sheet so that you can see my notes. You can see that, I've updated out with revision April 2022 is what we have in here for Alabama rates. If they update with a new revision, we will obviously change that new revision to 2023. They may not do anything for the new year. Some states operate on a calendar timescale and make cost of living adjustments to their rates. Other states say, screw it, don't do it at all. So we just have to pay attention, follow our links, and stay current. And that's why I spend a lot of my time over December and January doing nothing but tax monitoring and formula adjustments. So Alabama's done. Alaska is easy and done. We only have 48 and the District of Columbia left to go. And we're going to get there because we've already gotten there in the past. And now we are just troubleshooting and fixing up any problem areas and updating counties and waiting for the federal government to release the final, not the draft version, but the final publication 15T so that we can have our federal rates finalized. And many of the other states are dependent on federal rates. Alabama is actually one of them. Alabama has your projected federal withholding is actually part of their formula when they figure out how much to withhold in Alabama. So it is absolutely dependent upon a final version of the publication 15, which is the federal tax rates, in order to have a correct Alabama withholding. So I was asked today about, getting stuff ready for next year. And I was like, you don't understand how many states are actually related to a finalized federal publication 15. And until that is ready, no one can say what the rates in any state or the federal jurisdiction that you can't say until that version is final, because it is not final and it can't change. And it almost always does change in my experience. So we're rolling. I'm excited because I did so much of this work over the last few years that this process is actually it's like I'm polishing up and I'm making the finishing paint job on an already functioning program. It really isn't as laborious as it was when I was originally developing it. It's more fun now just getting things perfectly right and identifying differences between payroll providing paycheck companies and who's right and who's wrong. I like doing that. It's fun. So we're going to keep doing it. And if you're interested in the payroll package, your small business, buy it now because you're going to get the 2023 version and the 2022 version if you buy it now, because I just have one price because I'm working on it nonstop anyway. And I'm here to answer your questions. And payroll, we're here to make it easy and we're making it so. And go to Alabama. I haven't been to Alabama this year, I don't think. And usually I'm in like almost every continental 48 state or something at some point throughout the year. I don't think I went there. Weather's a little cold. It's probably even cold down there, but maybe I'll stop by just to check somebody's paycheck to make sure that it's accurate. All right. Good luck, everyone. Payroll should be easy. We're making it so. See ya.